Why is normal treated like a good thing? Look at the average person. Overweight, unhealthy, living paycheck to paycheck. Why would anyone want normal? The patterns that we follow in our day-to-day may be easy, but what happens when we challenge them? We find the truth that many dare not tread on, beyond the confines of the corporate rat race into the space of authentic self-discovery and liberation. Our guest, Ana Pereira from The Well-Resourced Woman, has traversed this daunting path. She left behind the absolute financial security and predictability of a corporate job to forge her own path. But her story isn't about a career change. It's a warning and an awakening to the deeper calling of life. Ana confronts the matrix that we are all wrapped up in, a system designed to keep us trapped in cycles of unfulfillment, poor health, and financial struggle, and she's here to show that there is a way out. Through her journey, she exemplifies the transformation that can come from becoming your own sovereign self, breaking free from societal chains to achieve not just true health, but also true freedom. We delve into the essence of exercise and wellness as tools for liberation, the transformative power of coaching in any aspect of life, and the journey to overcome life's negative patterns. And for those curious about the experiences of women in the entrepreneurial world, Ana's insights are particularly enlightening as someone who has not just made these changes for herself, but is also now coaching women to do the same. If this is your first time here, I make bi-weekly deep dives into fitness, nutrition, and wellness pop culture trends, as well as holistic bodybuilding and powerlifting content, so make sure to subscribe to hear more of that. For today's Amazon gift card giveaway, put a comment on what you believe is the biggest barrier between you and your goals. So with this ominous yet hopefully empowering backdrop out of the way, my name is Andrew with Holistic Motion. Let's get into it. So, Ana, can you share a little bit about what your journey was actually like going from the corporate world to becoming more of a fitness professional and working with clients one-on-one to now kind of going more the mastermind group, so to speak?
Yeah. So when I graduated university, I went straight into the corporate world. And frankly, I wasn't sure what I wanted to quote unquote do with my life, even though I had just gone through 16 years of school that's supposed to tell you what you want to do and that whole thing. and I just, when I was there, felt out of alignment ultimately. And I was asking a lot of questions. And at that point, I was already extremely curious and passionate about the healing arts, about fitness, movement, nutrition, living a healthy lifestyle. So I was already on that path and had gone through my own process of awakening, as many of us do, to oh, what's in our food, what's in our water, and so forth. And this was another part of that awakening process because I was in like the cog in a wheel in a system, right? This corporate system. This is a huge company I worked at, Fortune 50. They a tech company. They run a lot of business tech. And yeah, it wasn't my path. And I just was like, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do. And I think a lot of people feel that. Like but what I did notice and I looked around was that a lot of people felt that way and they were doing what was expected of them. And frankly, I was like, that's not how I'm gonna live my life. And clocking in and out and working for someone else's vision that doesn't necessarily align with mine and having to strategically like plan my PTO so I can make that vacation, like that whole world, right? So I left, quit without a plan, and I traveled. I think you know that about me. I don't know, maybe
Yeah, big traveler.
big traveler for a year and then on and off for a few more years after that, and ended up traveling around the world. I went to over 30, 40 countries and went on a lot of adventures. I was just like really curious about how people lived in different cultures and um, different. I got into movement even more in that regard because I was, when I would be in Thailand, I'd be doing Muay Thai. And I was by the ocean, I'd be doing free diving and just exploring different ways of living and philosophies and systems. And that ultimately is a very passionate thing of mine, is looking at all of these different systems, whether it's in movement or the healing arts or economics or these macro systems that we all participate in our world. And so I just started to explore that more and more. And then to answer your question, it finally hit me, into this journey, like, this is something I'm passionate about, is helping people on this transformational journey, is movement and health, and from a holistic point of view, and so forth. And why not do this actually as part of my career and vocation? And so I started to see how things were shaping up, and that has still to this day, when I decided, that was about 6 years ago, and it's still evolving. And so that's continuing to evolve, and looking at what people need and how I can help serve them from my own experience. And that comes from health, and it's also transitioning into understanding money and wealth and business development. And I started to notice clients of mine wanting help there. Even though we were working on health and so forth, as you know, when we look at different stressors, like, if you know Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and we're looking at the base there, like, well, are you financially sustainable? Are you living your dream, living within what I believe everyone here has a unique purpose. It may not be as glamorized as we make it out to be, yet we're all here to express something that is unique of our gifts and what we've, brought through. And ideally, how amazing if our business or work can be a vehicle of that. It's not always necessary. And for those that want it, like, to help them get there. So I started to see really how a lot of this coincided. That's my long-winded answer to your question. But basically, to sum it up, I'm always thinking of the development of self, body, mind, spirit, self with a capital S, and these vehicles of how we learn about ourselves. And I do see business as one of the most incredible vehicles, and a huge mirror, as you know, of our personal development. Your business is going to reflect back everything within you, all your insecurities, where you're stuck, your fears that you get to face. And my business partner and I joke, it's the biggest personal development workshop you didn't know you signed up for. So, um, yeah, that's what's led me to where I am today.
So you had kind of mentioned feeling out of alignment, and I feel like at some point in time, everybody has that. But sometimes it's like hindsight. You get like a handful of years down the line, and you go, "Oh my god! Like this is terrible. Like how did I not notice that? What was it that you actually noticed where you were just like, this isn't where I'm supposed to be. This isn't what I'm supposed to be doing."
Yeah, I mean, I was already questioning a lot of, like, the system, the 9 to 5, the rat race. And I think part of that, just being exposed to a lot of different lifestyles before that, and traveling even before I went on that long journey. I traveled a lot beforehand. And yeah, I also recognized it was autonomous with what I believe to be health, like working inside under these fluorescent lights, barely seeing the sun in the winter. Like, it, there were a lot of things out of alignment already from the way I saw things. And, I worked with people I really enjoyed working with. It wasn't like I was like dragging my feet, couldn't stand like my job. I was making really good money as well, which kept me there a little longer. That being said, that wasn't going to fulfill me. It's not enough, in my opinion. Financial freedom is tied into all these other aspects and vehicles of we can get into that later, but it of freedom, but, like, yeah, it just felt unfulfilling ultimately at the end of the day, and, like, I wasn't able to share what I'm really here to share. And so I just wasn't sure what that was. And I think a lot of people may relate to that. Like, oh, something doesn't feel right. I just don't know what it is. And until you have that hindsight where you can pinpoint the things, but listening to, as cheesy as it may sound, listening to our heart center, and like using discernment and feeling into, like, what is that right path. And I was doing that and asking these questions, and it was a very easy, this isn't for me. And also it was a difficult decision in that it meant like separate, like choosing a different path than my community, my coworkers, my friends at that time. Everyone I knew was in that world. So leaving it did, it was a big decision for me at the time.
Yeah, it's super, super scary making that shift, especially when everybody in your circle seems to be doing that. And there's almost kind of like this cultural gaslighting that goes on where you sort of decide to step away from it, or you kind of step out and take a look at it, and everybody's like, whoa, 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 like, what are you doing? It sort of becomes this like crabs in a bucket situation where it's like you start leaving and people kind of start grabbing on to almost pull you back. um I discussed this in, I think it's like episode like 58 or something like that. I'll link it for people on YouTube above, but um I did an episode about freedom and how a lot of people misconstrue having to exercise and having to diet and having to wake up early and all these different things. They see that almost as like a restrictive thing. It's keeping them down. It's preventing them from doing, the fun things, eating like shit, going out and partying super late on the weekends, all these different things. You've produced a fair bit of content about kind of becoming like your own sovereign person. Tell me more about that. What does that actually mean to you?
Yeah, and I listened to that episode, it was great. Essentially, this is where that quote of "discipline is freedom" can come from, and, well, interestingly, you say, like, snacking, eating whatever we want, drinking whatever we want, staying up super late. First, as you become more aware of the self as the observer, we can ask, why do we have certain preferences towards chocolate ice cream and Netflix? Is that really my preference? Is that a program? Is that like driven by, for example, with the ice cream, by a hormonal imbalance, by a parasite infection? We can go on and on about what may be the actual driver of your behavior. And if you are unaware of what is actually driving your behavior, then how free are you? And to reword that, you only have free will to the degree you know what drives your behavior. And so when I'm thinking of personal freedom and sovereignty, I'm looking at, for me, it started with the body and the physical body and, physiology and anatomy and the things you just touched on. And then I started looking into the psyche and why we make the decisions and choices that we do. And then that personally led me. I feel many other people on this journey, you probably relate. They go on this personal development journey, this fitness journey. It may turn into a spiritual journey or a journey, into these deeper levels of understanding consciousness. And that's where we start to really discover what freedom is. It is something from within. I cannot sell you or give you freedom any more than I can like make you fit. I can give you a program and a blueprint and knowledge and skills and accountability. You still have to go and do that work. And just because you can veg out on a couch, and nothing against watching a good show once in a while, but that we just need to like why are we making that decision? And who's really making that decision? What part or self of us or algorithm, if we want to look at ourselves as a quantum computer, is making that decision. And I think that's the first step towards personal sovereignty. And then from there, in my experience, we also start to look outside of like, well, what systems, healthcare system, economic system, media system, these system of systems we call a matrix, how are they influencing me and therefore my sovereignty? And how do I therefore start to create sovereignty within and create new systems? So that's where that even like sovereignty on a macro level starts to come in. Many people, I imagine, have many different definitions, people exploring that through law and things of that nature, people exploring sovereignty through financial freedom and money and so forth, people exploring sovereignty through being self-sustainable and growing your own food and having your own economy and so forth. And these are all aspects of that. that so that's my beginning thoughts on freedom.
It's almost like people have been brainwashed into being unhealthy in some weird way. Like it is, like you said, it's the media that we watch, the TV shows that we watch, the people we spend time with, our job, our this, our that, all these different things. Um, what if somebody was just, So, I'm going to change this question a little bit. Let's say somebody's starting to notice this. They're recognizing that they're just kind of following more or less this set path that everyone else is doing, and uh, a lot of people will be like, "Oh, well, like everybody else is doing this, so it must work." But if you look at the average person in the U.S., I think they have less than $1,000 in their bank account. They're overweight and they have a job that they hate. So it's like, let's say someone's starting to notice those things. They hate their job. They don't have any money. Their relationships are shit. All these different things. A lot of people might overcorrect and more or less just go into kind of bodily anarchy, for lack of a better word. How do you notice whether you're actually going the right direction for yourself versus just just doing the opposite for opposition's sake?
That's a great question. I can say from my personal experience, it's a journey. 10-year overnight success, they say, all of it, whether it's your health or wealth or building a business or building or cultivating a deep, meaningful relationship. None of that happens overnight. And so if you're waking up to a process of this doesn't feel right. I mean, well, interesting. I think that a lot of people have a dissociative pattern where we're so disassociated from our body or feelings or XYZ. It can take time to awaken to this, especially when you're saying, as you said, it almost is like it's designed, and that's because it is designed to keep you
Absolutely.
asleep. Like, people say the system is broken, it's working to perfection. It's designed to take your energy. The Matrix, the documentary, it takes your energy through attention, bandwidth, money, time, and so forth for profit. We see that in the form of money. That's not the only currency. So, how do we then step out of that and into more personal sovereignty? Well, I think that it starts with our personal choices and really starting to create intention and awareness. This can be done through journal, meditative practices. I think through working with someone, a coach or someone that can help to reveal patterns within you that you can change, and just starting to create that momentum. It doesn't need to be everything all at once. From a health perspective, changing from drinking soda to drinking clean water is going to make monumental shifts in your life. Going from sitting around all day to walking an hour a day is going to make monumental shifts in your life. I've personally experienced that on my health journey. And from there, you start to get some feedback. Oh, and then it's like, okay, what else can we add? Or what else can we subtract that isn't benefiting our life? That's even more important, in my opinion. What can we subtract? What can we cleanse, detoxify? And then from there, as things start to come online, because I do believe that if your physical health is deteriorating and we're not able to have as much energy, to think as well, to show up with more focus, it's going to be hard to do the other things that you mentioned. So I do believe that's a foundation there. And the same with money, it's like looking at, okay, well, why am I in this situation? My opinion, you've got to get control of your cash flow. And if you work for someone else, that's pretty difficult to do because ultimately you're on someone else's payroll. And that's not a bad, if you're working for something that you genuinely love, there's a lot of jobs that can be great. Generally, though, for the person that you just spoke of, they're probably in that predicament where they don't have control of their cash flow. So, how do I start to gain control of my cash flow? How do I start to, I would say, cultivate new skill sets? So, investing in your personal development, investing in yourself is the most important thing you can do. Onward and onward and onward and onward, whether that's in business coaches, mindset coaches, health, fitness, wherever you feel like you need the most assistance, as well as learning that on your own. And then you start to take, steps there. And then I would also say learning financial literacy and language. And just like, if you really want to get out of a place of discomfort in a money situation, it's important to learn how the system works in the first place and how you're participating in it. And then how you can start to add value into the system. That's what entrepreneurship ultimately is. We're adding value, service, we're solving problems. And then from there we can start to grow. So there's a lot of ways I can go. I'll keep it simple there. Um, and yeah, hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's perfect. There's you've heard of or read Atomic Habits, I assume?
Yes, I have. James Clear. Right.
Yeah, there's have you ever do you know who Dr. Stephen Cabral is?
Stephen Cabral, remind me, he's also an author, right? That writes a lot of these personal development books.
Yeah, he's got the book The Rain Barrel Effect.
Okay, I haven't read it.
Okay, so it's so these are two really really good ideas that are I don't want to say at odds with each other, but they're kind of a different methodology to a similar outcome. So, atomic habits is you take several small things and they compound over time and lead you to an incredible outcome. Whereas the rain barrel effect is sometimes you are doing so many things, the first thing that you need to do is remove a bunch of them. So he uses the example of like a rain barrel. If it's 100% full, you can't add anything else to it. How do you when you're coaching people or even with yourself, when do you make that decision of like, okay, we have time for more, or God, we've got to pull some stuff out of this? How do you make that decision?
Yeah, it's great. Well, if the rain barrel is full, then you've got to start there, looking at what we can subtract. I do love that theory. I tend to lean a little more towards that. That being said, I use some of the strategies that James Clear lays out for adding habits, stacking habits, breaking habits. I think that it's really effective. So I see I see a place for both of those. When it comes to our health or anything, we do want to look at what we can subtract. That is adding more stress, more toxicity, and that can be literally removing the processed foods from our diet or a relationship that we know is taking us down a path that is unideal and maybe even toxic or unhealthy. And so that's going to then clear up a ton of energy, so to speak, that we can start to add in other habits, other things.
Absolutely. With this idea of sovereignty, you keep referencing finances, and that's something that was, I mean, it's a huge thing for most people. It's one of the first that's like if I have any triggers in the world, it's probably finances. Um, Only because, like I said, most people have, a very, very small amount actually saved in their accounts. So I grew up in a relatively poor family, but I feel like everybody, once they saw their parents go through that '07, '08 crash, they all kind of absorbed that panic to some degree, right? Alex Hormozy has this idea that scared the shit out of me when I first heard him say it, because I was like, I am not going to do that. But it was most people can, almost immediately tell you how many followers they have on various different social media sites. They they will not look at their bank account though. There is like this fear, and his recommendation was what you first need to do is get comfortable looking at your bank account every single day, because that's going to keep it top of mind. How much money is going out, how much money is coming in, because we do make these like silly little, inconsequential purchases, but they all start adding up. I've been a firm believer that the first thing somebody needs to work out when it comes to this idea of like personal sovereignty or gaining freedom to any degree is it's either their health through exercise and diet, or it's their finances. And those are probably the two biggest triggers for people. So you keep on bringing up finances. How are you personally coaching that with people? Getting that first little step to where it's like they're out of that financial panic, so to speak.
Mhm. So, you touched on a couple of things there that I'll bring up in that question. A, the '08 crisis. And most of us have families that have lived through, through our lineage at least, through the Great Depression, through world wars. Times have been tough at many points of history, from a level of finances or what can be interpreted as scarcity. And so we can inherit those stories and belief systems through our lineage, through the momentum of our life, if you subscribe to past lives, that too, and also through the stories that we take in, especially in those first several years of childhood. And so, therefore, like how our parents approached money in the household can be very much connected to now how we approach it. And it does tend to very closely tie to the root chakra of safety and security. So, like what I would suggest, and when I'm working with people or with myself, we start looking at those those things as well, which generally lie in the subconscious, meaning we may be unconscious of it until we, as Carl Jung would say, bring the unconscious to conscious. What's that famous quote? Until you make the unconscious conscious, you will call it fate. Something along those lines. So, yeah, it's a for me, like, if we wanna look at things holistically, like, yeah, you can make a bunch of money and not do the personal development. That being said, if we want to embody wealth and prosperity from within and, like, feel in a place of because you can also make a lot of money and still feel unworthy and like you need more money and you're stressed about losing it and you're still living in that fight or flight state, which doesn't sound like solving the problem to me. So we want to look at why we may have these certain patterns, such as the avoidant style of avoiding our bank account that I know super well. I totally get it. And I agree with Hormozy in that you've got to flex that muscle even if it's uncomfortable at first. Okay, let's start looking at our bank account. Let's sit down. Working with women, like we take an approach of let's create a money date, a money ritual. Every week we're coming in, we're looking at our personal and business finances. What's coming in, what's coming out? How are we allocating our assets? What, like just getting comfortable with working with that and like flexing a muscle, like working out in the gym, eventually it becomes more second nature. And then we can move in and take on more complex ways of doing things. So that's where we start, like in the mastermind actually. We start with the foundations of money and then we move into the other aspects of business development.
So you recently started building this mastermind program specifically for women. What inspired that focus specifically? Why why is your focus on women?
Yeah, well, my business partner and I, both being women, we just felt called to creating a community and a container for women working through this. And it's interesting, like on that level of what I just talked about, women have been historically, at least in the last few thousand years, generally kept out of the conversation of finances and also will hold different belief systems around money and finances. So part of what we want to do is start to heal that relationship working with women. Another reason that we're bringing this together is we're looking at the masculine and feminine principles of business and life. So you're familiar with the Tao, I imagine, and the yin and the yang energies that we see permeating through our experience of life, masculine being yang, feminine being yin. And we all encompass both of those. And what I've noticed is like when we look at the current system that is starting to deconstruct right now, that some call the patriarchy, there has been a level of, uh, I would say, an unhealthy aspect of the masculine in the sense of business, almost like too much rigidity and and certain structure. That being said, you see the pendulum swing in I see a lot in female entrepreneurs, especially in these creative spaces, coaching, healing arts, and so forth, that now there's no structure or very, very little structure and systems and so much flow that you don't have that container now to build your business and build your life. And so it's important to have an understanding and working with both of those energies. And as women, we know how to work with women with that, you know, I would say better. We work with men though in the mastermind, like in the sense of we do have some partners coming in that are men, like on working with helping people with the business plan or leveraging funding and so forth. That being said, the actual container and mastermind is designed for women to come together.
Right, right. So, I've always seen, men and women as very complementary. There are things that men are good at. There are things that women are good at. There are things that they can learn from each other. And it's so weird that that's a controversial thing to say nowadays. But that's a really interesting point. A lot of women started getting into entrepreneurship. I'm picturing kind of like the like boss babe cliche that was floating around for a little while. Um, when you say it started getting like disorganized and it started getting a little bit less structured, almost to counteract the masculine like hyper rigidity in business, what did that kind of look like, and how are you coaching through that?
Yeah, and I can't say that's for every woman, obviously.
Oh, absolutely not. Like, yeah, I've got one of my best friends, family law attorney. She crushes everything. Like, she makes me look like a child when it comes to business.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you there. Like, yeah, and men experience what I just said too, right? There's this full spectrum of what I experienced, what I just said. Um, as controversial as that may be to say nowadays,
Yeah.
like you mentioned. Yeah. We are equal and not the same at the same
Yep.
time. So all of that to be said, can you repeat your question?
So when you're noticing this kind of unstructured, for lack of a better word, kind of chaoticness, how are you coaching through that? And how are you both bringing that to their awareness and coaching them through it?
Yeah. Okay. So one of the first things that we do, so after we're working through understanding our personal relationship with money, as well as how money and commerce operates. So part of that is going to be learning financial management, for example, and starting to develop habits. So a big part of this is creating the accountability and support and giving people a blueprint and systems that they can move into. Because I think that if you are in the place of that you just mentioned, lacking accountability, support, and some guidelines, it's going to be really difficult to get there. So that's part of what we're providing to help there. Then after the working through money, we're really looking at, well, what is your vision for your life? Not just the vision for your business, also for your life. And that's going to be unique to every person and what they're here to create in the world. And we want to take that into account. That is a bit more of the feminine, where we're getting into the you're tapping into your imagination and what do we want to create, what are we here to create, and that may look different than someone else's system, someone else's business, than this big corporate business. We can learn things from that, and it's going to be unique to what you're here to create. And that's what I love about business in general. I think what's attracted to me is we're taking a vision and then we're making it tangible. Now, to make it tangible, to make it something that we actually get to experience, that's going to require a roadmap where we're putting in specific strategies and so forth within, as you know, project management, marketing, sales, how we're fulfilling on our offer, how we're refining and structuring our offer, how we're sharing that with other people, marketing, and so forth. And so, yeah, we're guiding women through a step by step process on how to do that. And I feel like that, like when I came into business, I'll just share my personal experience. I didn't have that. And it was like, okay, I got to figure it all out on my own and learn all these skill sets and start learning about marketing and start learning about how to structure my business legally and how to like, oh, and I've got to learn about like money and I've got to become my own accountant. And, ideally we start to delegate these tasks and so we can stay into our zone of genius and come into that. That being said, these are the things I wish I had because that archetype I just described, I fit it. I was there. I came from the corporate structure and I swung into the other side. And so finding that balance has been a really big part of my journey over the last few years.
That is really interesting that you go from, like you said, this hyper structured to then, zero structure traveling, kind of that big pendulum swing. For anybody who's listening to this and they're kind of on they're hearing this, it makes sense to them. They're kind of on the fence, but they're like, okay, you know what, I want to take one or two steps. Um, what do you think, just out of the gate, like if you could do one or two things, this moves the needle for your life when actually achieving freedom?
Invest in yourself and your business. If we're talking business, invest in yourself and your business. It's probably the investment that feels scary. Uh, it's very difficult to grow past wherever you are, that glass ceiling, until we raise our actual standards and basement, so to speak. And we do that by creating a new identity, a new self, new skill sets, and all these things. And in order to do that, it's best to invest in yourself. That's what I could say. Invest in coaches. And I'll leave it with this. I would rather spend a shitload of money than a shitload of time. So if I can invest in mentorship that's going to take 10 years from, I'd rather put in $100,000 and get 10 years of expertise dialed into one than spend 10 years trying to save $100,000.
Yep. Oh my God, that is so spot on. Like, so many people will, spend thousands to earn pennies, or spend weeks to save minutes. And I mean, the coaching thing really cannot be over stressed. Almost no matter what you're doing, if you have the opportunity to find someone whose brain you can pick and actually gain that insight that they've had for so long. I mean, it's very funny on like a more macro level that we almost become the person that we wish we had. Like I am very much who I wish I could have found 10 years ago, because I'm like, shit, I didn't know how to make content. I didn't know how to coach. I didn't know how to do nutrition. I didn't know how to do all these different things. And, now I'm at this point where I'm like, God, like I could freaking teach this stuff to somebody overnight now. Is there anything I didn't ask you about that's really pressing on your mind?
No, I think this has been a lovely conversation. And, I'll add though to that perspective. When I went into the fitness movement space, that's exactly, I've looked back, that's what I did. I found some of the greatest mentors I could in that space. I worked with some of the highest caliber personal trainers, and, went through the Czech Institute,
Hmm.
worked with Paul Czech and so forth. It was like, for someone who had, as you knew, when we walked into HLC1 together, I had, my expertise was in the nutritional therapy and these lifestyle modalities, the psycho-emotional biomechanics and program design. I had zero experience in, aside from dabbling in my own personal experimentation. Zero like official uh, education, so to speak. And so I was just like, okay, I'm gonna find the best. And that is an example. It just what probably would take someone several years, it took me a year. So, and then I could build a career off of that. And then that evolves and so forth. So
I remember you and I on like various projects through the Czech stuff, um, always kind of like going to each other and being like, okay, like you seem to have a grasp on this shit. I seem to have a grasp on this shit. And it was kind of just like sitting down, after class doing homework or whatever, and just being like, what did you do for this and why? So like I still have all my old binders like on my bookshelf to the right. And like whenever I reference back to them or whatever, I'll like see little notes in there and stuff, or like, yeah. So it's funny. This was a this was an unexpected friendship, but yeah, it's been really really cool to see you grow and actually make this business really really happen for you. It is very very exciting to see you making the shift from coaching people to, well, rather just coaching general health and fitness to coaching coaches is almost more how it's starting to sound, is kind of becoming that person who is influencing on a much larger scale than just working one-on-one with people. I think that is a fucking incredible shift. Um, and I think that's really going to end up being a big source of significance for yourself and a big source of very significant impact. So I'm really excited to see what you have coming down the tube for the next couple of years.
thank you. Really appreciate you. Excited to see what you're creating as well. I know you're going through a big shift and rebrand, and
Oh yeah.
you're that person. I remember, like, we're always, like, researching and learning and, like,
Hmm.
changing, and I know that's something that, yeah, you embody, so I really appreciate that about you.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you. All righty. If people wanna find you specifically, where do they contact you?
Yeah, well, my personal Instagram is at energy with Ana, A-N-A, energy with just the 2 words, and, you can also find we have an Instagram that we'll be creating more content for the mastermind, which is called the Well-Resourced Woman. So our handle is Well-Resourced Woman.
Ooh, that's a good name.
Thank you. And our website is wellresourcewoman.co. You can go to /podcast, and I'm creating a special offer. We'll also have some free resources for any of your listeners. So that's wellresourcewoman.co /podcast.
Hell yeah, that's awesome. Cool. I'm very excited to check all this out. I'm excited to share this with everybody else. And then one other thing that I thought about this morning that made me laugh so hard was you, me, Eric, and I can't remember who else, but we were all sitting at dinner after like our very last class that we had together, and we're talking about business names. And I'm like, dude, your business, Energy with Anna. Eric, I was like, the Della Wave, that would be awesome. I didn't have a business name that I liked for myself for 5 years, and now it's finally happened, and it just something about that is so funny to me.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up. That was you. I was like,
Yeah,
oh,
dude, I
yeah, I'm going to
so funny.
change my Instagram handle. That's so funny.
Alrighty. Well, until next time, guys, this is Anna with Well-Resourced Women, right?
Yes, the well-resourced woman, singular.
The Well-Resourced Woman, and I'm Andrew with Holistic Motion. Until next time, guys, see y'all later. What a guest, huh, guys? Please go comment on their Instagram and let them know that you saw them here. And while you're just doing things that I ask you to, make sure to click this top video that I have linked. That is the last episode of the podcast, which I guarantee will add 10 pounds of muscle to your body. I'll see you there. Later.